In a forgotten corner of the countryside, nestled between limestone hills that had seen centuries pass, was a village that lived by the grace of the sky. And the sky had not been graceful for a long time. The earth was a tapestry of cracks, a mosaic of thirst. This is where we meet Lin. He wasn't a farmer by heart, though his hands were stained with the soil of his ancestors. He was a watcher. He watched the clouds that promised rain but delivered only wind. And most of all, he watched the stream, the village's lifeline, shrink into a fragile thread of water, struggling to survive, much like the people who depended on it. He would sit for hours, listening to the elders recount tales of a time when the river ran wild and the fields were emerald green. Now, the green was a dull, dusty brown, and the river whispered of its demise. Lin's curiosity wasn't spent only on the water. It extended to anything that was broken, anything that had stopped working. While other boys his age sought shade or simple games, Lin collected the village's discarded treasures: a broken cassette player, a rusted bicycle pump, a radio that hissed only static. His small corner of their modest home was a graveyard of mechanisms. Tonight, it was the radio. His fingers, calloused from farm work, moved with surprising delicacy, tracing wires, turning gears. He wasn't just fixing it, he was understanding it. He was searching for the how and the why. How did a voice travel through the air? Why did this gear turn that one? This relentless curiosity was his secret rebellion against the passive acceptance of their fate. The perseverance of the village was the perseverance of brittle grass. It bent, but it was dangerously close to breaking. The sun climbed higher each day, a relentless tyrant. The breaking point came not with a dramatic storm, but with a quiet, terrifying collapse. Lin's mother, a woman whose strength he'd always mistaken for invincibility, fainted while trying to draw the last dregs of water from the deep community well. The metal bucket clanged loudly against the stone, the sound echoing in the suffocating silence. Lin saw her fall. In that moment, the cracked earth beneath his feet felt like a personal failure. His tinkering, his curiosity, it was all childish play in the face of this harsh reality. Thirst wasn't an abstract problem. It was his mother, unconscious on the parched ground. That night, Lin did not sleep. The image of his mother's pale face was seared into his mind. He looked at his hands, not as a farmer's hands, but as a builder's. But he lacked the knowledge. His tinkering was blind. He needed the language of a different world, the language of physics, of engineering, of hydraulics. His village had taught him patience. The drought had taught him urgency. Now he would teach himself. He found his older cousin's discarded high school textbooks. The pages were yellowed and smelled of dust, but to Lin, they were a map. He made a quiet vow, not to the heavens or his ancestors, but to the dry earth itself. He would not just watch the stream die. He would learn how to bring it back. He would go to the city. He would study. He would become an engineer. The decision was made. The path, however, was paved with exhaustion. Lin's life split into two. By day, he was a dutiful son, working the fields from sunup to sundown, his muscles aching with the familiar burn of manual labor. His family needed every grain of rice they could save. But by night, he was a scholar. While the village slept, Lin fought a different battle. He fought against the complex equations that swam before his tired eyes. He fought against the kerosene lamp that sputtered and died, plunging him into darkness. He fought against the seductive pull of sleep, often waking with his cheek stuck to the pages of a math book. Every problem solved, every chapter read, was an act of defiance. It was his first true test of perseverance, to choose the abstract future over the demanding physical present. After a year of this grueling rhythm, the day of the university entrance exam arrived. He traveled by bus for 3 hours to the provincial town, his heart a drum of hope and fear. He walked into the examination hall, his simple clothes starkly different from the pressed uniforms of the city students. He wrote until his fingers cramped, pouring every ounce of his nighttime study onto the paper. Then came the waiting. Weeks later, he returned to the town to see the results. He scanned the long list of names posted on the bulletin board. Once, twice, a third time. His name was not there. The world, which had seemed so full of possibility, shrunk to the size of that white paper. The bus ride home was silent. The dust from the road felt heavier, the sun hotter, the future suddenly as barren as his fields. He returned to the fields full time. The failure was a physical weight. He began to believe his father was right. His place was here, his fate tied to the dirt. He started to pack away his books, the symbols of his failed ambition. It was then that Mr. An, his old primary school teacher, paid him a visit. Mr. An was retired, a man whose quiet wisdom was respected by the village. He watched Lin toss a physics book aside. He picked it up, dusting off the cover. He didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. He offered perspective. He told Lin that perseverance wasn't about never falling. It was about how one chose to get up. So, the first rain didn't come. Do you stop planting the seeds for next season, Lin? The seeds are bad, teacher. My seeds are bad. No, the seed is strong, but the ground is hard. You just didn't dig deep enough. The knowledge is in these books, but the strength, that's in you. Don't let one dry season define your life's harvest. Mr. Ann's words were like the first drops of a long-awaited rain. They didn't solve the drought, but they softened the ground. A new, tougher resolve settled in Lin. This was no longer just a dream. It was a debt. He owed it to his mother, to his teacher, and to himself. The cycle began again, but with a different intensity. He worked double time in the fields, saving every small coin. He sold his small surplus of vegetables at the local market, not for comforts, but for books. He bought a rechargeable electric lamp so his studying wouldn't be at the mercy of the kerosene supply. He became a familiar sight, the boy reciting chemical formulas while guiding the water buffalo, the boy sketching engine diagrams in the dirt during his lunch break. He was digging deeper. Another year passed, another exam, another bus ride, another anxious wait in front of the same bulletin board. This time, his finger traced the list, moving down, 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 and stopping. There it was, his name, printed in stark black ink. There was no explosion of joy, no shout of triumph, just a profound, quiet tremor of relief that ran through his entire body. He had climbed the first mountain. He closed his eyes, and for a second, he didn't see the crowded schoolyard. He saw his mother's smile and the proud nod of Mr. An. He clenched his fist. The first seed had sprouted. He bought a one-way ticket to the city. The city was a different kind of drought. It wasn't a drought of water, but of silence, of space, of familiarity. The noise was a physical assault, a constant roar of engines and voices. The buildings blotted out the sky, something he'd always used to tell the time and predict the weather. He arrived at the chaotic bus station with a single, worn backpack containing his few clothes, his books, and a small jar of salted peanuts from his mother. He felt like one of his own broken radios, bombarded with signals he couldn't understand. He clutched the strap of his bag, his knuckles white. This, he realized, was a new kind of wilderness, and he was once again starting from nothing. The university was another shock. He had fought so hard for the knowledge, only to find he was years behind. The other students, children of the city's elite, spoke a different language, a language of laptops, of internships, of casual confidence. They discussed theories he'd never heard of, using English terms he didn't understand. He sat in the vast lecture hall, his pen scratching furiously across a paper notebook, trying to capture the flood of information. He felt like an imposter. The concepts were complex, the pace relentless. The perseverance that had gotten him here now felt inadequate. It was one thing to study alone by lamplight. It was another to compete with the best who had been preparing for this their entire lives. To survive, Lin did what he always did. He worked harder. He got a job washing dishes at night to pay for his tiny rented room and his meals. He spent every waking moment in the library, bridging the gap between his dusty textbooks and the modern curriculum. His first major project was for his Introduction to Fluid Dynamics class, design a small, efficient water pump. He poured his heart into it, using recycled parts from a scrap heap, just like he did back home. He believed his village ingenuity would impress them. On presentation day, he stood proudly next to his creation. But when he switched it on, it sputtered, rattled violently, sprayed water on the professor, and then died with a pathetic puff of smoke. The room filled with laughter. His cheeks burned with a shame deeper than any he'd felt before. Lin wanted to disappear. He wanted to pack his bag and go back to the fields where failure was quiet and private. He was cleaning up his watery, smoky mess when the professor, Dr. Hua, asked him to stay. Lin braced for the scolding. But Dr. Hua didn't scold. He picked up Lin's hand-drawn blueprints. He looked at them, then at the failed pump. He saw past the recycled materials and the spectacular failure. He saw the logic, he saw the ambition, he saw the village ingenuity, but this time he saw it as a strength, not a weakness. He pointed to a single, critical flaw in the pressure calculation. Your practical skills are creative, Mr. Lin. Your theory is sloppy. You built this like a tinkerer. But your core concept, adapting a low-flow system for high lift, where did you get this idea? From my village, sir. The stream is low, but the fields are high. Come to my office. We will stop you from building explosions, and we will start building an engine. Dr. Kua became the second Mr. An of Lin's life. He saw the raw, untested perseverance in the young man and gave it direction. He didn't just teach Lin theory, he taught him how to think like an engineer. He secured Lin a small grant, freeing him from the dishwashing job and allowing him to focus. For his final year thesis, Lin proposed something audacious. Not just a pump, but an integrated, solar-powered water purification and irrigation system, built from low-cost, durable materials, specifically for remote villages. It was the culmination of his entire life's experience. The tinkering, the drought, the failed exam, the city's technology. He worked tirelessly, sleeping in the lab, simulating models on the computer, and then building components by hand. His hands, once stained with mud, were now stained with grease and solder. Graduation day. Lin stood on the stage, the heavy fabric of the cap and gown feeling foreign on his shoulders. His thesis hadn't just passed. It had won the university's award for innovation in sustainable engineering. As his name was called, the applause was real. This time, no one was laughing. He accepted his degree, a single piece of paper that represented years of sacrifice, of battling sleep, of overcoming failure. Dr. Hua shook his hand firmly, pride in his eyes. But as Lin looked out at the sea of faces, his mind was already miles away. He wasn't thinking of the high-paying job offers from city corporations. He was thinking of the cracked earth. He was thinking of his mother. The blueprint was complete. It was time to go home. The homecoming was not a hero's welcome. Lin returned not on the familiar bus, but in a small, rented truck overflowing with strange blue barrels, gleaming solar panels, and coils of pipe. The village gathered, their faces a mixture of curiosity and deep skepticism. He was no longer just Lin. He was Lin from the city, a man who wore strange clothes and carried complicated, shiny objects. They had seen government projects promise water before, projects that failed and left only rust. His parents hugged him, proud but confused by the mountain of equipment. His father looked at the solar panel, then at the sky. Lin, all this for water? The sky gives water, son? Not glass. It does, Ba. This glass just helps us catch the sun's power, and that power will help us catch the water under the ground. Talk was cheap. The village would only believe in water they could touch. So Lin began to work. At first, he worked alone. He surveyed the land, tested the soil, and began digging the foundation for the main pump, near the spot where his mother had fainted years ago. He worked with the same methodical perseverance he had used to study. He dug from sunup to sundown. One by one, intrigued by his relentless labor, a few of the younger villagers came to watch. Then, one of them picked up a shovel, then another. They didn't understand the engineering, but they understood work. Lin, speaking their shared language of labor, began to explain. He wasn't just building a pump, he was teaching them. He was building a team. The day of the test arrived. The entire village was present. The drought was at its peak. The air was thick with anticipation. Lin had connected the final wire. He stood before the main control box, his hands trembling slightly. He took a deep breath and flipped the main switch. A low hum started, built to a groan, and then silence. Nothing. The pump didn't engage. The pipes remained empty. A collective sigh of disappointment rose from the crowd. His father looked away, unable to hide his shame. The villagers began to drift away, muttering, "City toys. Useless." Lin stood alone by the silent machine, the failure echoing the laughter in the workshop, but 100 times louder. This was his deepest failure, because this time he had failed them all. Night fell. The village was quiet, as if in mourning. But Lin did not leave. He lit his old rechargeable lamp, the one he'd bought with his market money. He sat by his failed creation, the physical embodiment of all his hopes. Despair washed over him. He wanted to give up. He thought of his first failed exam. He thought of Mr. An. The ground is hard. You just didn't dig deep enough. He thought of Dr. Kwa. Stop building explosions. Think like an engineer. He forced his exhausted mind to be methodical. He unhooked his laptop, powered it by the last of his battery, and ran diagnostics. He checked every wire, every connection, every line of code. And there, at 3 a.m., under the light of a billion stars, he found it. A simple relay, burned out by an unexpected power surge when he first connected the panels. A $1 part. He had no spare relay, but he was still the boy who fixed radios. He ran to his parents' home, dug out his old box of junk, and found a similar relay in a broken cassette player. It was a long shot. He worked as the sun began to rise, his fingers soldering the tiny part in place. The villagers awoke to the sound of hammering. They emerged, groggy, expecting to see him packing. Instead, they saw him stand up, take a deep breath, and flip the switch again. The hum returned. This time, it did not groan. It held, steady and strong. Then, from deep within the earth, came a new sound. A rumbling. A rush. And then from the main pipe, a glorious, impossible torrent of clean, clear water burst forth, splashing into the newly built reservoir. A child screamed in delight. People gasped. Then they cheered. It was a sound of pure joy. Lin watched the water, the sunlight glinting off its surface. He walked to the spout, cupped his hands, and took a long, deep drink of his own perseverance.